Some moments change everything: a missed flight, a booking mistake, or a stranger's smile that lingers a little too long. I never believed in fate until the night I ended up sharing a hotel room with someone who would completely turn my world upside down. My name is Adrian, and this is the story of how a business trip to Chicago became the weekend that changed my life forever. The fluorescent lights of O'Hare Airport buzzed above me as I stared at the departure board in disbelief. Cancelled. That single word blinked next to my flight number, and with it, my carefully planned schedule fell apart. I was supposed to be in Chicago by evening, well rested and ready for the marketing conference in the morning. Instead, I was stranded, exhausted, frustrated, and desperately trying to rebook on my phone. "Excuse me, is this the rebooking line?" I looked up from my screen and time seemed to slow. The man standing beside me had dark curls that brushed his forehead, warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and a worn leather jacket that made him look like he'd stepped out of an indie film. But it was his smile that caught me, not polite, not distant, real. "Yeah," I said, trying not to stare. "Though calling it a line might be generous, it's more like a mob." He laughed, a low, genuine sound that made something in my chest shift. "I'm Ethan," he said. "Let me guess, Chicago for the Midwest Marketing Summit." I blinked. "You too?" "Yeah, my agency's presenting on Saturday. What about you?" "Just attending, first year at Morrison and Associates." Standing next to him, I suddenly felt overly polished. My crisp shirt and pressed slacks looked stiff next to his effortless style. Yet somehow, I found myself wanting to keep talking. We spent the next 3 hours waiting together, two strangers in airport limbo, sharing stories instead of silence. Ethan worked for a creative agency in Brooklyn, the kind of place with brick walls, open spaces, and too much coffee. He talked about design the way some people talk about faith. His words painted pictures in the air, and before I realized it, I was opening up too, about my job, my doubts, and a relationship that had quietly faded away. He listened without judgment, then said softly, "Maybe you're just waiting for permission to be who you really are." That line hit deeper than I expected. By the time we finally boarded our delayed flight, it felt like I'd known him for years. We exchanged numbers and promised to meet up during the conference. I tried to focus on my book, but my mind kept drifting to the way he smiled when he talked, that quiet confidence that made me forget how tired I was. We landed in Chicago at 2 in the morning. By the time I reached the hotel, I was running on nothing but caffeine and willpower. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and modern lights. "Reservation for Adrian Mitchell," I said, sliding my card to the clerk. She frowned, typing for what felt like forever before looking up apologetically. "I'm so sorry, sir, but we're completely overbooked. There's been a rush of last-minute arrivals, every room is full." My stomach dropped. "You don't have any rooms?" She shook her head. "We're checking alternatives, but with the conferences and weddings in town, it's nearly impossible tonight." I exhaled, trying to stay calm, when I heard a familiar voice. "Booking crisis." Ethan was walking toward the desk, his jacket slung over his shoulder. Even at 2 a.m., he somehow looked effortless. The clerk's phone rang. She picked up, listened for a moment, then brightened. "Actually, we just had a cancellation, one room left with 2 beds. Would you gentlemen be willing to share?" Ethan met my eyes. There was no pressure in his look, just quiet understanding and maybe a hint of curiosity. "I'm okay with it if you are," he said. I hesitated only a second. "Yeah, that works." Room 2847 was high above the city, its windows glowing with Chicago's skyline. 2 queen beds, sleek furniture, and a bathroom of black marble and chrome. "Not bad for a last-minute fix," Ethan said, dropping his bag on the bed near the window. "I promise I don't snore much." I smiled, finally letting the tension ease a little. "I'll take my chances." He showered first while I caught up on emails. When he stepped out, his gray t-shirt and flannel pants made him look relaxed, almost too comfortable. "Your turn," he said with a grin. The scent of his soap lingered in the air, something clean and woodsy. I stood before the mirror, my reflection tired but alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. I changed into a t-shirt and shorts, brushed my teeth, and stepped back into the softly lit room. Ethan was in bed scrolling through his phone. The screen's glow outlined his face, calm, focused, unguarded. "Long day," he said quietly. "The longest," I admitted, climbing into my bed. The room fell into silence. Only the city hummed outside the windows, and between that sound and the steady rhythm of his breathing, something in the quiet felt strangely comforting. Two strangers, one room, and a night neither of us would ever forget. "Adrian." His voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes." "Thanks for not thinking I was a serial killer for agreeing to share this room." I smiled into my pillow, the night still young. He chuckled quietly. "Fair point, good night, roommate." "Good night, Ethan." I closed my eyes, certain I wouldn't sleep, but exhaustion pulled me under, and my last thought was of warm brown eyes and a smile that somehow felt like home. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the windows and the smell of coffee filled the room. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was until I saw the second bed neatly made and heard the shower running. I checked my phone, 7:30 a.m. I'd slept straight through my alarm. It was the most peaceful rest I'd had in months. Moments later, Ethan emerged from the bathroom, steam curling behind him. He was already dressed casually, sleeves rolled and hair still damp. "Morning," he said with a grin. "Hope you don't mind I made coffee. It's terrible, but it's caffeine." I smiled, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "You're a lifesaver." The energy between us was light and easy, yet beneath it was something quieter, an unspoken awareness that neither of us quite knew how to name. I got ready quickly, pulling on my blazer and straightening my tie while Ethan stood by the window looking out at the city below. "Ready to face the corporate world?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. He turned, and for a second his gaze lingered just a little longer than casual. In that glance was something gentle, something curious, like a door quietly waiting to be opened. Neither of us mentioned it, but we both felt it. The morning began innocently enough. We moved through the conference together, orbiting each other like planets, sharing the same path, close but not colliding. Chicago had its own plans, though, and by the end of the day, the distance between us would start to fade. The Midwest Marketing Summit was exactly what you'd expect: long keynotes, endless slides, and too many cups of mediocre coffee. Normally, I thrived in these settings, but today I couldn't focus. Ethan was everywhere, his laugh in the crowd, his voice across the room, the spark in his eyes whenever our paths crossed. During the mid-morning break, we grabbed coffee together, joking about the endless stream of corporate jargon. "I think that last speaker said the word paradigm at least 20 times, Ethan said, stirring sugar into his cup. "Only 20, that's impressive restraint," I replied. He laughed. "Marketing, supposed to tell stories, connect with people. Half these talks sound like they were written by robots for other robots." I grinned. "So why do you still show up?" "Because sometimes you find real people hiding between the slides," he said, looking at me over the rim of his cup. The way he said it made my pulse skip. "What made you get into marketing?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. Honestly, stability, good salary, clear path, all the responsible reasons. "But is it what you love?" I hesitated. "I used to think so, lately I'm not sure." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I get that. I left corporate after 3 years. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I needed space to breathe. Sometimes the safe choice is the one that slowly closes the walls around you." Before I could reply, an announcement called everyone back to the next session. "Save me a seat at lunch?" he asked. "Definitely." The lunch buffet was crowded, but we found a quiet table near the windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. The conversation flowed easily, natural, and unforced. Ethan told me about growing up in Portland with two moms who ran a bookstore, how he'd always been encouraged to be exactly who he was. I shared my own story about Connecticut suburbs, about polite distance, about chasing approval instead of purpose. "You use words like appropriate and suitable," he said gently, "like you're describing a business plan, not a life." "Maybe that's what it's been," I admitted softly. "I think I've been so focused on doing everything right that I forgot to ask what I actually want." "So what do you want, Adrian?" The question hung between us. I didn't have a full answer, just the feeling that maybe it was sitting across the table, smiling at me. Before I could say more, a woman in a burgundy suit approached, greeting Ethan warmly. They talked about a project they'd worked on years ago, and I watched him switch into his professional charm like flipping a light. But when his eyes met mine again across the table, I saw it, the same quiet spark. The rest of the afternoon blurred. I sat through presentations but absorbed none of them. My thoughts kept drifting back to him, his words, his laugh, the easy way he made me feel seen. By 5 o'clock, the conference was winding down. I spotted Ethan near the registration desk, surrounded by a small group laughing at someone's story. And when he noticed me, his expression changed, subtle but unmistakable. His face lit up in a way that made my chest tighten. I knew in that instant that whatever this was between us, it wasn't finished yet. He caught my eye across the lobby, excused himself from the group, and walked over with that easy, familiar smile. "Hey roommate, survived day one." Barely, I laughed. "I need real food, something not served from a warming tray." "There's a deep dish place a few blocks away," he said. "Join me." I should have said no, I should have kept things professional, but instead I heard myself say, "I'd love that." The restaurant was crowded and alive, the smell of tomato sauce and baked dough mixing with the noise of laughter and conversation. We found a booth tucked into the corner. It felt private, cocooned, like the world outside had faded. Our knees brushed beneath the table, small, unintentional moments that seemed to say more than words. He raised his glass, "To surviving conferences." "And to unexpected roommates," I added. The clink of glasses was small but felt like a spark. The more we talked, the more the noise around us disappeared. The conversation drifted from work to life, then to the parts we usually kept hidden. He told me about a long relationship that ended when two dreams stopped aligning. I told him about trying too hard to love someone the right way, only to realize I'd never been honest about what I truly needed. He listened, really listened, his hand resting near mine on the table, close enough that I could feel the warmth. "I think I've been afraid," I said quietly, "afraid of wanting too much." Ethan's voice softened. "You don't have to be afraid of that, not with me." Outside, the city glowed gold and amber as the sun disappeared behind the skyline. We walked back in silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. Every small touch, a shoulder brushing, a shared glance, carried the weight of something beginning. In the elevator, the air between us shifted, not a word spoken but everything understood. Back in our room, the city lights spilled across the floor, painting everything in shades of silver and promise. He turned toward me, eyes searching. "Adrian," he said quietly, "come here." I stepped closer, his hand brushed mine, light, hesitant, and full of meaning. The world seemed to pause around that single moment. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. It wasn't about impulse. It was about recognition, two people who had spent too long pretending they didn't need to be seen. Later, as the night deepened, we sat near the window, talking about everything and nothing. The city hummed below us, but all I could hear was his quiet laugh. When morning came, sunlight crept across the sheets and I realized we'd fallen asleep side by side, fully dressed, still half tangled, comfortable in a way that surprised me. He stirred, voice low. "Morning." "Morning," I replied. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought for a long moment. "No," I said, "none at all." His smile said the same. That day, I watched him speak at the conference, confident, passionate, unguarded. He talked about storytelling, about the courage to be authentic. But when his eyes met mine from the stage, I knew what he was really saying. That sometimes the bravest story you can tell is your own. And that night, as the city shimmered again outside our window, I understood something I'd been running from for years. That love doesn't always wait for the right moment. Sometimes it finds you when you finally stop hiding. When the crowd finally cleared, Ethan made his way toward me, loosening his tie. "So, honest opinion?" he asked. "You were incredible," I said truthfully. "I mean it, Ethan, that was really special." He ducked his head, suddenly shy. "Thanks, it means a lot coming from you." "Why from me?" "Because you're someone who understands the cost of hiding," he said quietly, "of pretending to be fine when you're not." Then, right there in the conference hall, he took my hand, a small, brave gesture that made everything else fade away. "And you're someone I don't want to hide around anymore." My breath caught, people were walking all around us, but for that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of us. I want that too, I whispered. That evening, I returned to our room with my thoughts tangled and heavy. Ethan was already there, half reclined on his bed, working on his laptop. He looked up and smiled. Hey, how was the rest of your day? Fine, I said, my boss was there. He heard the edge in my voice and closed his laptop. What's wrong? Nothing, I said quickly, but it wasn't true. She just reminded me of reality Monday morning. Responsibilities, all the things I'm supposed to care about. Ethan stood and came closer. What are you really saying, Adrian? I don't know, I admitted. This weekend's been amazing, you've been amazing, but it's also not real life, right? We're in a hotel in another city pretending the world doesn't exist. What happens when we go back? You're in New York, I'm in Boston, different worlds. He sighed softly, so you're already planning our ending. I'm trying to be realistic. No, he said gently, you're trying to be safe. He stopped a few feet away, his voice low but steady. You keep building walls before anyone even has the chance to hurt you. I get it, I used to do that too, but I thought we were past that. What if we're not compatible in real life? What if this is just conference magic? Ethan laughed once, not mockingly but with disbelief. Conference magic, that's what you think this is. I don't know what to think, I said, my voice breaking. I'm terrified, I don't fall for people I just met, I don't feel this fast. Good, he said softly, stepping closer. Let it be messy, let it be uncertain, that's how you know it's real. He rested his hands lightly on my shoulders. Stop trying to solve this like a work problem, Adrian. Some things aren't meant to be planned, sometimes you just have to trust. I don't know if I can, I whispered. He smiled gently, then let me show you how. He brushed his thumb across my cheek. I'm going to take a shower, long day, I need to decompress. But Adrian, if you want, you can join me, not because you have to, but because I don't want to keep pretending we're strangers. He kissed my forehead and disappeared into the bathroom. The sound of running water filled the silence. I stood by the window, heart racing. This was it, the moment of choice. Stay safe or step forward. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't sure where this would go or what it meant, but for once, I didn't want to hide from it. The light from the bathroom spilled softly across the room, warm, golden, inviting. I walked toward it, each step a quiet act of courage. When I reached the door, I paused and smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about consequences or strategies. Just possibility. Later, we lay together in the soft light of the city, wrapped in the quiet afterglow of truth. No words, no labels, just two people who had stopped running. Stay with me tonight, Ethan whispered. Just to hold you, I want to wake up with you again. I nodded, okay, yes. He smiled and pulled me close. I could feel his heartbeat steady beneath my hand. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he murmured. I hesitated. I used to write poetry in college, bad poetry, but I loved it. I wanted to be a writer once, but it felt too risky, too uncertain, so I stopped. Do you still write? No, I told myself I didn't have time, but really I think I was afraid. Ethan's voice was quiet but certain, then start again. The room fell silent, but in that silence something new began, not just a love story but the courage to live truthfully, no matter how uncertain the path. Not for success, not for ambition, not for any practical reason. But simply because it mattered. Maybe I will, I said, the thought both terrifying and exhilarating. Your turn, I added softly, tell me something. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm afraid I'm not enough. I left corporate work for something creative because it felt right. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just running from commitment, from stability. My ex used to say I couldn't stay still long enough to build something real. Maybe he was right. I turned to face him, our eyes inches apart. Is that what you think this is, you running again? He shook his head firmly. No, this is the opposite. This is me finally running toward something, toward you, and it scares me because I actually care how it turns out. Me too, I admitted quietly. I care so much it hurts. Good hurt or bad hurt? Good hurt, I said with a small smile, the kind that means something changing. He smiled back, eyes warm. Then let's figure it out, the distance, the logistics, all of it, because this is worth figuring out. You really believe that? I really do, don't you? I thought of the past 2 days, how Ethan had walked into my life and turned it upside down, how he'd made me question every wall I'd built around myself, how he'd shown me what it felt like to be truly seen. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. Yeah, I said, my voice steady and sure, I really do. Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the hotel windows as we woke wrapped around each other. The conference was over, reality waited, but instead of panic, I felt peace. So, Ethan said, propped on one elbow, looking at me with sleepy affection, Boston to New York, 3.5 hours on Amtrak, right? About that, I said. Extremely doable, he grinned. Weekends, video calls, middle ground meetups, there's a cute town in Connecticut right between us. I laughed. You've thought about this? I've thought about nothing else since 3 a.m. when you were snoring softly. I don't snore. You absolutely do, and it's adorable. He kissed my forehead, then grew serious. I know it's fast, I know it's impractical, but I want to try, really try with you. What if we're just caught up in the moment? I asked. Then we'll figure it out when we get there, he said gently, but I don't think that's what this is, do you? I searched his eyes, the same warm brown that had become home in just 3 days, and I knew. Messy, scary, real. No, I whispered, it's not just a moment. So he said, smiling softly, we try. We try. We took the same flight back to New York, sitting together this time. As the plane lifted over Lake Michigan, Ethan reached for my hand. What are you thinking? He asked. That I came here for a marketing conference, I said, and left with something so much more valuable. Better networking, he teased. Something like that, I smiled. I think maybe the universe knew what it was doing, maybe things had to fall apart so something better could fall into place. Ethan's smile was soft. I came here looking for success and instead I found you. That's incredibly cheesy, I said, laughing through tears. I'm creative, he shrugged. We specialize in cheesy. Months passed. Cold platforms, weekend trains, late-night video calls. Messy, imperfect, perfect. Then one day in New Haven Station, I saw him through the train window, that same smile lighting up the crowd. He ran toward me, dropped his bag, and kissed me like it was the first day all over again. Hey roommate, he said with a grin, our old joke. Hey yourself. He laced his fingers through mine. So I have news. Good or bad? Depends, my agency's opening a Boston office, they want me to lead it. I told them I needed to talk to my boyfriend first. My heart stopped. What did you say? I said I'd move only if you're ready. Boyfriend, I repeated, smiling. I love that word. Ethan laughed. So should I move? Are you kidding? I said. Move to Boston, move in with me, let's stop doing this halfway. His eyes softened. You mean it? I've never meant anything more. He kissed me right there on the platform. People stared, neither of us cared. Moving day. Boxes everywhere, my minimalism clashing beautifully with his chaos. It looked like us. He caught me smiling at him, having second thoughts. Not even one. He pulled me close. Good, because you're stuck with me now. I can live with that, I said. That night, as the city hummed outside, we lay in the quiet comfort of something real. Hey Adrian, Ethan whispered. Yes. Thank you for that moment back at the hotel when you stopped hiding. I smiled, tracing his hand with mine. Thank you for showing me how. He laughed softly. We were roommates in a hotel. And now, I said, my heart full, we're roommates in life. He smiled in the dark. For how long? Forever, I whispered. And for the first time, forever didn't sound scary. It sounded like home.